Listen up. We are back with another episode of the Construction Mentor Podcast. My name is Ike. I am your host. What am I here to do? As always, we're here to promote the construction industry. We're here to promote the construction industry because it's the place to be, especially if you want to live an affluent life, no matter where you are, what you look like, or where you come from. The opportunities are there if you want to take advantage. Whatever you want your life to look like, you can make it happen in this industry. I've done it, and I consistently have people on here that have done it. We have another one on here today. We're continuing with an interview format. And if you're already in the industry, we also want you to be aware of what other people are up to, give you a network, give you the mentoring, give you the tools to take your career to the next height. So today we have Renae Sams from Arizona. I'm coming to you from New York, and we want to talk about, who she is and what she's about. Renae, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Ike. I'm really privileged, honored to be here. I love what you're doing with your podcast and what you do to spread the word about construction, because I really agree with you. It's such a great industry to build a career, build a future. A lot of us have done it, and I think a lot of us will say that we only wish that we would have gotten into it sooner.
Absolutely. And on that point, it's never too late to get in. A lot of people, they reach out to me all the time that they've either in a career that just sucks, or maybe they want to go out on their own and they're getting out of a relationship or something, and they just want to start a new life or something like that. And we've had people on that have talked about that freedom. Mm-hmm. Now you are similar to me in that we both are in the endeavor of spreading the word and sharing what the opportunity can look like. So can you give insight to what you're doing in your day job and what your platform is about?
Yeah, absolutely. So within this past year, I've founded and developed a nonprofit organization focused on women in construction, and it's called builder.org. And around that nonprofit, I've also authored a book, and it's a journal and reflection guide for women in construction. And it's mainly focused on providing some context on some regular issues that women, face in the industry. And it gives them a platform to share their own personal thoughts and opinions on different things, because, I may not handle something the same way another woman would. So it's not a blanket approach. It's really trying to meet with the individual in what she's going through.
That's incredible. And what exactly are you doing today?
So today I have been work-wise.
Yeah. So what gives you the authority or the credibility to be promoting the industry like that?
Yeah. So I've been in the construction industry for about 18 years. I started out as an engineering assistant, and then I kind of moved up to the ranks of construction manager. That was my last role. And I was overseeing hyperscale data center projects here in the Phoenix region. And it was as an owner developer side of the house. So I left the GC realm, went over to the owner for a handful of years. And then I realized I needed to take a step back and give back to the community that I built my career through, which was being on more of the construction side. So right now I'm focused more on the nonprofit and eventually working with some contractors that I'm probably going to be joining their team here soon.
Got it. That's amazing. And data centers, big in the Phoenix area.
Absolutely.
Definitely big in the
everywhere
Phoenix
you go,
area.
they're popping up left and right.
And what's crazy that people don't realize is they think that, like, for instance, Trump just announced that they're going to do the $500 billion in AI investment, right? Which means what? Infrastructure, data centers, things like that. And the crazy thing about it is that it's not necessarily, we know that there's a trade shortage and stuff like that, right? Yeah, and we know that we don't have enough people and, there's materials and stuff like that, but maybe I shouldn't say it. Maybe I should let you say it. What's the resource that they are the most strapped with when it comes to data centers?
It really is the people. It's hard to find good, skilled people that want to do the work. And there's contractors all over the region that are just struggling to find good help. And it's from the labor side to the management side, quality, safety, like all of the different realms of construction. We need help in filling those roles. So a lot of times we do try to reach out to all of the people that maybe aren't familiar with the industry, talking to high school kids, talking to people that are in training, adult schools, and just kind of encouraging them on that route, because, construction has just so many different facets. You could go into the trade, you could go into a management engineer role, or a safety or quality role. Hell, we've got accountants, we've got business developers. Like the business is just far reaching, and it takes all kinds.
Yeah, and you can pivot into whatever you want, right? Like you can be in the builder side, you can go to the owner side if you don't like that. A lot of people come out of the field and they decide they don't like that and they want to go back in the field. They don't want to be in the office managing. And it really is a shortage, especially in specialized work like data centers. So when you go into construction, getting experience in a data center or a hospital or life sciences, which would be like a lab, the more specialized work that you go into, the more you can kind of write your own ticket and take that anywhere, right? So that's great experience to have.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that they don't have the power, actually, like from the power plants, to actually power up a lot of these facilities that they want to build.
Yeah, it's been a struggle, and I've seen a lot of it firsthand. Just all of this acreage that they're purchasing, they're buying out, but they've yet to figure out the power solution or the water solution.
Yeah.
So
it's like buying a house, but I don't know how to turn the lights on because there's not enough power.
Exactly.
So let's take a step back. So we got a little high level overview of your career and how you got up there. You did that in like 3 sentences. But Renae, where'd you grow up and what was that like? Like, what was your situation where you grew up?
So I grew up in Northern California, small town, like outside of like Carson City, Reno area. It's Lake Tahoe. I had a graduating class, I think, of 200 and some odd people, but it was a small town mentality, but it was also the heart of like tourism. So a lot of people traveling in, there was casinos around. So there was a lot of that. And as long as I can remember, I always wanted to just get out of that. I didn't like the small town living. I didn't like not being able to grow and expand where I wanted to be. And ever since I hit high school, I think I was just itching to get out. I didn't really have any idea on what I wanted to do for a career. I always saw my mom as the primary breadwinner. She was working 2 or sometimes 3 jobs at once. And that's all I saw was the grind of, keeping food on the table, keeping a roof over our heads. And that's what I saw. So I didn't really have any goals or dreams. I didn't even know that construction was an industry that I could be a part of because it wasn't visibly like available to me. And no one ever had shown me women in the construction industry or in trades. And I think that's what's important with the organization and kind of what we're doing is showing that visible representation that, yes, this is something available to you. All I saw when I was a kid was a lot of nursing and military, and then just service industry. So that's why I didn't have really any goals of what I wanted to do when I was a kid.
Gotcha. And you say service, you're talking like restaurants, hotel work.
Restaurants, yeah,
like
hotels. Mm-hmm.
So what was it? I mean, what was your path initially when you came out? It wasn't construction, right? Like
It wasn't.
Did you go to school? Were you like, nah, school's not for me? You didn't know what to do. What was that path like in?
Yeah, that's where it gets really messy. I'll be honest. It started out when I got into high school. I was still just like a normal kid doing the classwork, attending class, and then I kind of slipped into the bad teenage years where I started cutting class, ditching class almost every day. I started drinking at a young age, and I just didn't have my head on right. But I was still showing up to take tests, exams, and just passing with the bare minimum. Eventually, a high school counselor talked to me and they said, well, you really should just take the high school equivalency exam. You're turning 16 here soon. You might as well take it and then just kind of move on with your life. But it wasn't really guidance per se. It was just like, we don't want you to be our problem anymore.
To be honest with you, that as you were saying that, I'm like, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
What type of adult or guidance are you giving somebody by telling them to leave school? But
yeah.
Okay.
And that's kind of where it ended. I said, okay, well, let me do that because on this track, I might not be able to graduate. So if I could test out, let's do that. Sure. So 16 years old, I passed that high school equivalency exam. I weaned myself out of the high school classes by taking a couple of AP like accounting classes just to kind of keep me in touch before I could figure out what to do.
Sure.
And then eventually I just kind of landed on culinary school, but it wasn't because it was a dream of mine. It was just kind of another thing, like, well, my mom was a cook, so let me go down this road and try to see if I could be a chef or a cook. I got deep into student loans unknowingly. I didn't know anything about it when we were signing up for it. So that was just kind of a money pit. And I ended up finding, after about 1.5 years or 2 years into it, I was like, this isn't for me. This is not, it's great as a hobby. I love cooking, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do. And then right around when I turned 18 is when I lost my mom like a week after I turned 18. So that was really hard for me to try to figure out, because I was already kind of unguided and just trying to figure out my way around life. And losing her was just a huge hit to like my entire life. Buried myself deep into taking any job that I possibly could. And, I was doing retail, doing more service industry, doing a call center, whatever I could to just keep working and keep food on my table. And eventually I got tired of it and found a temp agency that I was able to get placed as an office administrator for a couple of firms in Southern California. Sure. And then that's where I started getting into working with construction firms. And
so when you were, everything that happened up to that point, high school, 16, losing your mother at 18, and then working, the temp agency, them getting you down to Southern California, it sounds like that's what made you go down. You actually went down to Southern California. And was that change of scenery like a good thing for you? Was it like a reset? Was it a bad thing?
Yeah, it was actually the culinary school that took me out to Southern California. And when I found that wasn't it, then the temp agency was shortly thereafter. And it was a huge reset. It was in a larger city. I was, there was several people just in small areas. Like, it was not anything that I had experienced before living in a small town. And unfortunately, I ended up getting into, bad scenes and crowds and doing a lot more drinking, and then struggling while I was in culinary school, also doing the same thing, just out drinking all night, and then show up to a class to take an exam and pass it and then move on with my life. And it just wasn't a healthy rate that I was going at in my life at that point.
And what was like the turning point, or when did you hit either rock bottom, or when did you see the light?
I'd say a couple of the points where it was rock bottom was just not being able to just have a solid roof over my head. I was staying with roommates. Like, I'd be paying cash for their utilities and not really having a place of my own, not having any vehicles, any home or anything like that. And I knew I had to find something that was a lot more stable. Like, these retail positions and everything were just not stable for me. They weren't getting me the hours. I wasn't growing. I wasn't learning much. And I had to find something that was going to get me further in life. And the temp agency was just all I knew to step in that direction, getting into like an office scenario or something that was a lot bigger than what I was doing.
So with the temp agency, and they came to you with this position in a construction company, was that like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, good opportunity? Or was it just like, yeah, it's an office job, I don't care what kind of company it's for?
Yeah, I had no idea. I was going to get placed, and I figured eventually I'll get hired on full time, and then I'll figure it out from there. And the first couple of placements weren't very successful. Eventually, they placed me at a large architectural and engineering firm that had a CM arm. And that's where I really started to see something that I wanted to do. I saw a lot of women in leading positions. They were office directors, professional engineers. And and I started to be able to see the construction side. I got to go to site visits. I got to go to work with the community to get their feedback on this new, sound wall that we were going to build. So I got to see a lot more of it. And that's where it kind of piqued my interest on the construction side.
So you had mentioned when you were up in Northern California that a lot of the women that you had been exposed to were in service work, basically. And so was this like the first time that you actually saw a woman, I guess, in an industry that you didn't even know at all, right? You probably knew what, guys swinging hammers and boots and jeans and stuff like that, but probably didn't know the business side of it. So was that just all enticing to you to kind of see these women in power positions and then you wanted to emulate that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just for the first time being able to see women that were leading these projects, they were professional engineers. And at the time I didn't think that I could be there in their shoes because I, wasn't suited for college. I wasn't able to go down that road. I wasn't financially stable to go down the college route. But seeing those women in those leading positions, the way that they were just leading on their own, it was really eye-opening for me.
Yeah. So just my own personal experience and especially where I grew up and the way that I grew up, I was told my entire life growing up that I was privileged because I was white. I was privileged because I was a male. I was privileged because I came from a middle class, household. Even people that I went to high school with that were, my classmates sitting next to me who came from wealthier families than I did, allegedly had it worse than I did because they were black and I was white, and that used to piss me off a lot. And I hated the fact that they could get scholarships that I couldn't get and all these things, right? And I'm going somewhere with this. I promise. I grew up very angry because of that, because I grew up in a house where, my mother battled addiction and it was a very abusive, verbally abusive household to grow up in. And I saw a lot of things that I wouldn't allow my own kids to see or would never want to expose them to. And I was like, you know what? I didn't have it easy. Like I didn't have it good. I'm here busting my ass. I put myself, through college and no student loans. And I've worked 2 to 3 jobs before and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize until I got out and I started mentoring in after school programs in the city in Boston and in New York, when I was talking to those kids, that I couldn't, because of the way that I looked, I just couldn't get to them because they didn't see themselves in me. And the more that I spoke to them, it occurred to me that their world where they grew up in was not the world that I grew up in. And what I did grow up around, although it was tough, was I grew up around a lot of guys in the construction industry and people that looked like me. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me the power and the value of seeing people that look like you in powerful situations or succeed in certain situations. And they genuinely didn't, it wasn't registering with them until I brought my friend in who's from Haiti, who is very much the opposite skin complexion of me and speaks the same language that some of those kids spoke at home. Mm-hmm. He spoke Creole. And that was like life-changing for them. Like a light bulb went off. A few of them actually said to me, like, I get it now. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I say that story just to stress, to a lot of people that do listen to this and, whether the people lean left or lean right, people's perception is created by the environment that they grew up in and created by the people that molded them and created that environment for them. Mm-hmm. And although, you might not say that anybody has more or less of an advantage because of their skin color or whatever that may be, there is a tremendous amount of power in seeing somebody that looks like you in a successful position.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could be saying the same exact thing, but when somebody says it that, you can relate to and it resonates with you a lot more. And I found that a lot, going through the construction industry. There was a lot of women in VP positions. They didn't look like me. They were, it was tough for me to not write them off because they didn't know the hardships that I had to go through growing up and seeing the things, and I don't know that for sure, but that's immediately my assumption. And I think a lot of people get that for sure.
So when you were in that role and now you're in this new environment where you're looking up at these women with some status, mm-hmm. Did you reach out to them? Like, how did you work out of that office admin position? Because I imagine you weren't really doing construction related things, but then you kind of got exposure to it and you started gravitating towards it. Did you get mentorship from them? Did you let them know like, hey, I want to be like you?
Yeah, there was a lot of it was a really good environment, good, healthy environment where they were just interested in supporting somebody that was curious. And I was always curious about a lot of things, asking questions, trying to figure out things. So I did a lot of PS&E packages. I did a lot of, drawing sets, preparing those documents to get set out to the clients. And it was just a matter of them appeasing and answering like any of my questions that I had. It wasn't until they started to see my curiosity kind of bloom and like, she's really interested. We got to start giving her more responsibility to go down this road. And, unfortunately, there was another gal in the office that had the degree, and she kind of shit all over that, where she's just like, well, why is she getting promoted when I have the degree, right? So there was a little bit of that, and it was just, everyone was in it. The men were supportive, the women were supportive in that office, and it was just, being hungry for information and wanting to learn more. And a lot of the times people were just invested in feeding into that.
Yeah, you said two things right there that resonate, and I always like to point out recurring themes. And one of them is showing interest and curiosity, right? Less about experience. In education, I'd take somebody with no experience in education, but somebody that's very interested in what we're doing and what we're talking about, right? And the second part of that, you went right after that, is you're taking responsibility before you even have it, right? You're an office admin. What the hell does that mean? That means that you're doing things that everybody else doesn't have time for. But you're showing interest in what they're doing, and you're trying to take responsibility. And that is how you get more responsibility. And that is how you get promoted, right? Regardless of where you come from or what your education looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that role, it was a really great place to work. Unfortunately, I made some poor life decisions that made me leave that role. And then I kind of was back at it, going back to the service industry, trying to figure out a way, to correct my mistakes, basically. I won't go too far down that road, but it was due to a relationship that I got into, was not really healthy. And it took me down that road where I ended up leaving that job, which I could have been extremely successful in. And eventually I ended up getting over to Guam, and that ended up, it was because of that relationship. I kind of followed this guy around, and I was always still just in it for the work. That's all I knew how to do, was just work hard, do my best at anything. I didn't care if I was working at an airline. I didn't care if I was working in retail, anything. I was just doing my best at whatever I could. When that relationship took me to Oklahoma, took me back to Southern California, and then it took me to Guam. That's where I started to really dig more onto the construction side. I worked for a drilling company as one of the gals, just scheduling trucks. And then eventually I made it to the GC side as a project coordinator, just taking in all of the stuff that I've learned previously, the knowledge that I had about drawings. It kind of gave me the advantage to work my way from that role into a project engineer role.
So there's a lot of people out there that, know deep inside that they need to make a change in their life, and maybe it's a career thing. Maybe they want to get back to construction, or maybe they feel like they made a mistake and maybe it's too late. What would you say to somebody in that situation and maybe knows that they're not surrounded by the right people, whether it's who they hang out with or who they're in a relationship with?
Yeah, I'd say really consider your options. If there's a lot of unhealthy things happening around you, I experienced that firsthand. And if you don't get out of it, you could end up in an even worse situation or worse spot. So I think you've got to look out for your own health, your mental health, yourself, and get out of it if you can.
Yeah, and I think being around people that want the best for you and that just want nothing but success for you, it's something a lot of people talk about, and it's like a very popular thing to come across on social media and Instagram. And what I would say, if I could just chime in, is when you try to do the right thing and you act intentionally in positive ways and you try to project that, those people will find you, right? So sometimes you have to remove yourself and maybe it's going to church, maybe it's a new job, maybe whatever it may be. But try to put yourself around people that you want to be like and that are good for you and want good things for you. That's the best thing that you can do for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're surrounded by people that want to win, that want to do great for themselves and want to do better in their life, then absolutely you start to gravitate towards that mentality also, and you start to kick loose some of those bad habits or things that are holding you back.
Right. Now, where did it go from there? So you're back in construction now. How'd you get back in it? Did you reach out to people that you had known at the previous job, or did you have a little bit of resume that you started shopping that around?
It was just going after it, really, and just putting my foot in wherever. The worst that anybody could say is no, right? So I've learned from just the years of missteps and poor choices that a no is not going to take my birthday away, or they're not going to, hurt me if they say no. So I just keep pushing. And I just went out to any company that I could, just construction company, wherever I was at in Guam, and just tried to find a position that would work. And because I didn't have any schooling or anything behind me, it was really just whatever entry position that they had available. And I've done that a number of times, just starting from the bottom and just kind of working my way up, that I was used to it by now. So I took on that project coordinator position at the general contractor. I started working on these federal projects in Guam, and then I saw a lot of superintendents and other engineers, project managers, quality managers. They all took a liking to my ability to be curious and my ability to want to understand more and try to look for more responsibility.
Can you describe the seat of a project coordinator and what that entails? Like what type of things you were doing in that job, and what you were looking up at, and other responsibilities you were trying to rip down?
Yeah, so the project coordinator role started out more of like an administrative role. So we were handling timesheets. We were working with vendors to confirm deliveries of materials, and also doing all the paperwork for the foreman and everyone in the field.
And then what was the next step up from there? Like, what were you looking at the superintendents and project managements doing that was enticing? I just want to try to paint a little bit of a picture.
They were out on site. that was the most intriguing for me, is they got to go outside and they got to actually work and build on stuff. So that's what made me want to be curious about going out and seeing what they do. I'd always ask if I could walk the site with them and just like, hey, can I go take a look at this? And then they started inviting me out to, go see a crane pick or go see something. And that's really where I started to just fall in love with being more on the field side.
Yeah, listen, it's like when you're a kid and you're in school and it's like raining outside and you can't go outside for recess. It's, like when you're working in an office, sometimes you need to change the scenery. And one of the things that I love about construction project management specifically is that you get the comforts of being in an office and working with your brain and doing logistical things, but you're also in the field. Like you're also walking things and crawling around and trying to figure out, physical problems that are actually in front of you and how to make a project come to life and to work and to fit, and you're coordinating 30 different trades together. That's an appeal that I don't think a lot of people understand is there, or a lot of young people understand is there in the business. They see the boots, they see the jeans, but they don't understand like the business and the leadership that comes in construction project management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And when I got the ability to just go out on site and ask the questions, and they got me in the bosun chair to practice rappelling down a shaft that they were going to do, and it was just, there was so much more involved in being out on site than I had ever realized, and that's what I really wanted to go towards. And that's where they started to train me up towards the field engineer, project engineer role. And it was a group effort. The superintendents took a liking to it and helped me learn. Quality managers, everyone was just in because I was curious, and they wanted to feed into that.
A lot of young women complain about and I'm not saying that's a bad thing or that they're wrong, just about being a young woman in the field, and a lot of the older guys don't want to work with them and take them under their wing. That's not been my experience. I work better. The more women I work with, the better, because women are better at certain things than I'm good at, which is good. Probably why I need my wife. But I always seem to think that actually a lot of the older men treat the young women nicer than they treated me. What was your experience like with some of the crusty old guys?
Yeah, I mean, there was a mix for sure. It wasn't always a great experience, but it wasn't always shit either. A lot of the long in the tooth superintendents would treat me just like one of the guys. So if I'd show up, our shift started at 6 a.m. and they'd say good afternoon, but they'd say that to everybody. So it's not like they're picking on me in particular. And then there's some that just didn't want anything to do with me. And I made it a point to just go up and shake their hand and talk to them anyways, because, what are they really going to do besides just be rude to me? I still need to get the information from them. So I did see a little bit of it where some of the men maybe didn't want to help, or they wanted the women to be in the admin roles and not necessarily out on the field. But there's an overwhelming amount of men that were just willing to talk me through things, share what they're doing, and help me when I had questions or explaining something.
Everywhere has their assholes, right? Every industry has their assholes. Sure. But, and it's funny because those are probably not the people that you want to learn from anyway, right? No. And that's what I would chalk that up to. So, okay, you work with them, you get the information that you need to get to, you get your job done. Mm-hmm. And the people that do respond to your curiosity and initiative are probably the right people to learn from. So that's okay. Not everybody's meant to be a mentor, right? Yeah. And you'll be better off for it. So now then you got a nice long career where you kept climbing up the ladder. What was that like, and how did you do that? How did you go from somebody that didn't even grow up in the industry, service industry is all you knew, you're moving all over the world, you were in frickin' Guam, and now you're back in California and then Arizona. What ranks did you rise up and how'd you do it?
Well, I was in the project engineer role for the bulk of the years of my career. And again, it was just wanting more responsibility. I know I could do it. I know I can be great at it. And getting afforded the opportunities was the tough part. There was a company that I was with at one point where I kept asking for that next step. I was assistant project manager at the time. I wanted to get into the project manager role, and they basically told me, well, that's not what we see for you. And they took me off of a really high profile job and put me somewhere else that was saturated with personnel. And I was just itching to get back to the high profile job because it was a challenge. It was difficult. It was the best place that I felt I could learn, and they didn't see it that way. And I ended up giving my resignation for that company. And then I got picked up from the owner side as a project manager. And then they quickly realized that with all the experience that I had picked up throughout my career, I was able to grow into the construction manager role.
Nice. And I assume you like that side of the table better than the contractor side of the table.
The owner side?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. It was great. It was very, I will say it helped me grow in different areas of my career. Seeing it from the owner's perspective and seeing it from the developer's perspective compared to the general contractor side, it was just a different flavor of the industry. And I'd say that I was in a point where I saw less growth in that role. And I think I was having a lot more growth on the contractor side of the house.
So did you stay there until you decided to start Build Her, or?
I did. Yeah. Just last year I left that company, and it was a 6-figure job. It wasn't for pennies on the dollar. It was a really great paying job and a great role, but it was just not fulfilling what I really wanted to give back to. I wasn't feeling the passion for the industry anymore. I wasn't really learning or growing, and I wasn't able to really fulfill what I wanted to do, which was support the growing generations in the trades and the construction industry. So when I left there, I ended up starting the nonprofit shortly thereafter and writing the book at the same time. And now I'm just trying to gauge my way back into the industry on the contractor side.
As in, like, you're thinking about a comeback?
I am, yeah.
Okay. All right. So now, have you learned anything new? Has your perspective changed now that you've had a long career and you've had some time now where you focused on mentoring and promoting the industry, and you've been able to put your thoughts on, into a book, which I'd like for you to, again, mention where the book is and where people can find it. But have you learned anything different, or has your perspective changed in that time?
So what's changed in my perspective is that it's my perspective and it doesn't necessarily apply to anyone else. And that's kind of the premise of how I developed the book. I share a little bit of my my experiences in the industry and some of the topics that we all generally face, along with some research that I had pulled for women in male-dominated spaces. But it's never going to be a blanketed approach for every single woman. And I say that, like, in the first chapter of the book, some things that I feel or that I value aren't necessarily going to work for the next woman, or the way I handle somebody when they're shutting me down on the job site or not letting me speak, another woman's not going to handle it the same way. And I found that just through various conversations with women in the industry in different roles. And that's when I knew that that's how my perspective needs to be, is it has to be open and adaptable, because not every single one of us are going to be the same, and we're not going to be treated the same or develop or grow the same. Women are in different stages in their career and in their lives where they may be in a season where an admin role works perfectly for what they're doing. They may be in a season where they want to grow and they want to fast track their way up through the ranks, and they can take those high demand roles, those long hours, long days. And I think we just need to celebrate and support everyone that's in it, regardless where they're at.
I think that applies everywhere. I think that even applies to, like, when you're dating. It's like, be yourself, and find your own path and find your own personality. And if you try to put yourself into somebody else's mold, like, that's where it's not going to come across as genuine, authentic, and you're not going to be happy trying to be somebody else. Right. And I think especially for women, and I'm speaking from my wife's perspective, if you don't mind me doing that, but her perspective has changed much more than men that I grew up with. Right. Like, our perspectives are kind of the same from friends that I have. And I mean, we grow up later, right? We mature much later. So we change in that way. But like, her motivations and something inside of her is different from when she was early 20s to late 20s to now a mother of two. Right. Yeah. She just, if you ask what her career aspirations and goals were and what that next step looked like, it just changes. So I would encourage, anybody to be open, like you said. Be open to who you are, be open to learning more about yourself, and be open to being, authentic for whatever that might look like at whatever stage in life you are.
Absolutely. And I like to encourage people, that's why I started the book and the organization, is for them to reflect and journal on it for themselves. And that's how the book is structured. There's a lot of write-in prompts and journal entries that they could do so they could figure out their own story and their own path. And what I believe is that all the women that are early in their careers or mid-level in their careers, if they start sharing their stories to women in high school and middle school, then those kids can start to see somebody that they can achieve to or see themselves in that role.
So what's your thought process like now with the potential comeback into the industry? Like, what does the ideal situation look like for you as somebody that's now, you've had a long career, the industry, you've had to take a step back, you've been able to take a step back and kind of write down your perspective. What does that ideal opportunity look like for you?
It is being surrounded by people that know the industry and are hungry for growth and development and being the best that we can be. And I think I know of a handful of teams that do that. And those are the pointed folks that I've been talking to. Not just professionals in their own trade, but they're real, authentic people. They call bullshit when they see it. And I think that's important. You can't just be yes men in this industry and derail your entire team and hang them out to dry. So it really sticks with me when I see contractors that are willing to tell owners no when they're trying to sign them up for a bad deal.
That is so. It's funny you say that, because I tell people that all the time, and I just launched a construction project management course, and that's one of the things that I talk about in managing your clients' expectations. There's a section called managing your clients' expectations. You have to be able to tell them no. They are paying you to be an expert. Be the expert. That may mean that you have to educate them.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just say yes and just, for lack of a better phrase, bend over. Like you got to have some backbone, and you got to be able to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head. It's, if you ever want to be held accountable, construction, somebody will call you out on your bullshit if you're full of it. So, Renae, we're coming up on time. I like to try to keep it at 45 minutes. Floor is yours. Is there anything that you were hoping that you get to, or any kind of advice that you'd want people to hear that are considering, a path into construction?
I'd say go for it. It's a really wide spanning industry, and any trades that you have, from whatever it is, even if you're young and just coming out of school, if you were on a sports team, or if you worked in customer service, client facing, there's all these different realms that you can actually apply to the construction industry, working on teams, solving problems, being on your feet all day long. There's different realms of the industry that can support you in the experience that you have. I'd also say lean on others for help. Ask help. Ask questions. Sorry. Ask questions and ask for help when you need it. Because if you isolate yourself and you try to figure out yourself, it's just going to be a lot harder. And there's so many resources out there, your podcast included, that can help drive you to the next level, the next step in your career, and help encourage you to do more or to learn. And I'd also say, don't force your expectations on others. Like I said a little bit earlier, if you're in a different season, you're hungry, you're going after it, don't expect that from the next person or the person next to you, because they may not be there. And that's fine. That's what we need the team for. We need to be able to leverage each other's experiences and drive all in one. You
must know Mel Robbins, right?
I can't think of it.
Okay. So Mel Robbins, that's one of her 3 main rules of life, is not to expect those things of other people, not to try to expect them to deliver in a certain way or act a certain way. It's just not a good way to live. But you highlight such a good point that I think this industry is unique in that whatever type of person you are physically, or what type of person you are personality wise, whatever your skill set is, there is a spot for you. And if you come in, it's not a life sentence. You can pivot. There's ways to move left, right, up, down. And there truly is a affluent life, a well-compensated career for whatever that personality type or, avatar you are. So I definitely, I encourage everybody to come in.
Yep. Agreed.
So, Renae, I really appreciate you coming on. Can you tell people where they can find you, and just one more time reiterate where they can find the book?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Buildher.org. So it's build-her.org. That's our website that gives the gist about the organization. You could also buy our book there. I'm mostly active on Instagram at build_her_org, and also on LinkedIn at Renae Sams and builder.org as well.
All right. So go check her out there. I'm going to share in all the posts that we got. And Renae, I appreciate you for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time. And for everybody still listening, I love you, and I'll see you next time.